Well, the Anaheim Ducks certainly made themselves known on draft night in Vegas and had a really interesting couple of days, so let's get into it. At third overall, the Anaheim Ducks jumped everyone in line and drafted star of the show, Becka Senica. Now, I had Becka Senica much later on my board. I like what Becka Senica brings to the game, really high-end skill level, but I think this is the epitome of what NHL teams love to bet on. Tall guys who have development potential. For me personally, and this is just me talking, so Ducks fans, I like Becka Senica. Let's get that out of the way. Drafting a player who you are not sure of as he is right now, but you're hoping becomes a certain thing because of a growth spurt, at third overall, you have to admit, is a risk. There were a lot of very interesting players this year with very diverse skill sets that just in some ways maybe couldn't match up to Becka Senica's one-on-one skill and just how much he's improved with his ability to leap into the neutral zone and just become an excellent F1 forward on an offensive breakout. But there just wasn't much else to his game for me. He's a very projectable offensive player in the NHL and he has a really good wrist shot as well. So that's things you can build off of. But I found that when he didn't have the puck, he was not as much of a factor in the game as some of the guys that were available in this range. Look, if you want to bet on the development upside with him, I literally cannot argue against that. But also the thing is, other players in this draft will develop as well. And the risk factors for me are just a little bit too much for me to see him go third overall. I had him ranked a little lower. He was a lot lower on my list early in the year, and he did get better. We'll see how this works out. He's not a bad player by any stretch of the imagination, and he should be a good offensive player at the next level. Again, it will be very interesting in 5 or 10 years to look back at what the Ducks said no to. But then at 23, the Anaheim Ducks traded up with the Toronto Maple Leafs and drafted Stefan Soberg. I adore this guy. I am hoping for the best for Stefan Soberg, and I feel like Ducks fans are gonna adore him. I think he's the epitome of the type of defenseman that the Anaheim Ducks have been looking for over the last few years. People have been comparing him both in and out of the NHL to Radko Gudas, and now he's on the same team as Radko Gudas, so what do you know? And look, I think Stefan Soberg brings a lot of very, very interesting things to the game. He's physical, he's intense, he's a real pain in the butt if you're playing against him, he's a jerk. Whatever negative words you want to use about a player you hate playing against, he is that thing. It's great. He's so much fun. He's a pretty decent skater as well for someone who plays like him. He's got an absolutely wicked wrist shot as well, which goes kind of underreported, but he showcased it at the World Championship here and there, and I think people kind of took note then. But this is a player who, since the World Juniors, has just looked really, really solid to me and plays a way where I would be willing to bet on it. And at 23rd overall, I get it. I see the appeal, and I think that he could be a really valuable defensive player in the NHL one day with maybe a little bit of potential offensively if some of his hockey sense issues and offensive zone play can be ironed out a little more. At 35th overall, the Ducks took a huge upside swing on Lucas Pettersson of Modo in the Swedish Junior League, and I've been a big fan of Lucas Pettersson as well. This is the third player they drafted that was in my first round, and I really like the upside of Lucas Pettersson. He's a natural center who gets up and down the ice really well. I think he was distributing the puck a lot better at the end of the year than what I remember at the beginning of the year. I think off the puck he was applying himself a lot more often at the end of the year than at the beginning of the year. I just think he's taken a lot of good steps, and in terms of guys on the Swedish under-18 team this year that could put defenses on their heels, get to the net, and just push the game in the right direction, he was one of few of them that was capable of doing so. So seeing him drafted here, I'm really happy that he went here, and I feel like this is an upside offensive swing from the Ducks that I think could work out pretty well for them. At 66th, they drafted Maxim Massay. I'm not a huge fan of Massay, to be perfectly honest. He wasn't ranked on my board. I think he's a power forward who's good at his style of play in a weaker junior league. He's a decent player under pressure, and that's kind of where he excels. He's got decent edges and turns to evade pressure, but there just wasn't enough that he put together all at once that was exciting enough for me to put him on my list as a potential power forward at the next level. This is around the range where I feel like it's reasonable to take him, though, in the early third round, and we'll see what happens with him. I think there's a relatively low upside, but the way that he plays, could it work? Sure. At 68th, they drafted essentially a very similar type of player in Ethan Precision. He's just taller. I saw Precision a few times this year and didn't really move the needle for me, but a 6'7" player on the younger end of draft eligibility this season is maybe something worth betting on, and they did it to an extreme extent with Becka Senica, so maybe they're just trying to capture the same kind of vibes, and bet on where he's going to be in a year or two from here. I didn't really see a whole lot with precision, but the frame is a thing, and who knows where he goes. At 79th, though, they drafted Taran Smith, who I had at 74th on my list. I like Taran Smith a lot. He brings a very creative offensive approach to the game, moves the puck pretty well, he's pretty shifty on his feet, he's got some skill. I think there's some good echoes here of an Olin Zellweger. Not saying they're the same player, but they play for the same team, drafted by the same team, and they do have a little bit of that confidence and swagger to their type of play with the puck on their stick that I think Anaheim is betting on again with him, just maybe in a more limited fashion. He's a good player, and I think considering he's the 6th player they drafted, yeah, it makes a ton of sense, and I think this was a solid pick for the Ducks. At 100th overall, they drafted Alex Blais of the Rimouski Oceanique, and I saw Blais a few times this year. If we want to talk pure skill, fun factor, Quebec League players, Blais is probably at the top of that list. I wasn't really blown away by his style of play projecting to higher levels, and I kind of expected him to go a little bit around this range, maybe a little bit later. So I think there may be something is here, but this is a... So I think there might be something here, but this is a bit of a boom or bust guy. I don't really see him being a bottom 6 player in the NHL, and I think that the top 6 in the NHL is a very, very high bar, but it doesn't mean he can't get there. We'll see how it goes, but Blais is an interesting one. At 182nd, the Anaheim Ducks drafted Austin Berovic off of the Madison Capitals, a re-entry that went undrafted last year. He's big, he skates okay, he's resilient under pressure. They got Massay, they got precision, and now they have Berovic. Maybe they get something with one of these guys that can play down their lineup. I didn't see anything that really blew me away with Berovic, but he did have a very, very good season for Madison this year. A team that also should be gaining a lot more firepower in the future, so we'll see what happens with Berovic. You leave him in college for a while, maybe you have a bottom 6 forward, but I didn't see anything that really blew me away, but also it's 182nd overall. And at 214th, they just closed their eyes, turned off the lights, and took a big ol' swing on Darl Ulas, Latvian defenseman playing in Sweden. And I saw Ulas a lot this year. There are people in Sweden who really, really like this player. He's got a really good shot from the point, wrist shot, slap shot, he uses it a lot. The rest is just a big work in progress. The skating is okay, the skill level needs work. He's big but doesn't really apply himself physically to great results, but it's not bad. I think he's just a nice blank slate to work with a bit of offensive tools that you can play around with, and maybe you end up with something down the road. I mean, they drafted a guy kind of similar in Rodwin Dionisio, and while I still have my doubts about Dionisio, he's had a really great junior career, and you can't fault him for that. So I think there's something here with Ulianskis, but over the horizon, I would say, for him, and caps off what I think is a bit of a tricky draft class to evaluate. So the Anaheim Ducks are a tricky one to project, but I came down on a 2B for them. I think taking Becka Senica at 3, as much as I like him as a player one-on-one, it's a huge risk and a gamble for them to take him that high, especially considering what they said no to. It's just a weird call, and we'll see what happens there. I can't say it won't work, but it's risky. But getting Stefan Soberg and Lucas Pettersson before 40th overall, I think are two really, really good adds for the organization. I think Pettersson has good boom potential of being a really, really good pickup in the second round, and I think Ducks fans are going to just adore Stefan Soberg. I think his teammates are going to adore him. It's going to be a very interesting NHL experience to see him play at some point, hopefully, but I think he has all of the tools and the mentality and the personality to make it work, and I can't wait to see it happen. And between Massay and Precision and Berovic, maybe there's something here. You draft a big, resilient player that can eat the puck and eat minutes in the NHL. Cool. Alex Blais is exciting. Darl Ulas is interesting and maybe is a nice blank slate to work with and is also extremely young. So overall, I think they landed with a lot of good players. Taran Smith is another underrated one that the Ducks picked up that could turn out to be an interesting player down the road, even if it is a good AHL player. But I do really like what he brings to the table, and overall, it's a good class top to bottom. It'll just be very, very interesting to see how things have shaken out 5 or 10 years from now. So that's it for the Anaheim Ducks. If you liked it, you can go to our description box and find our Fanatics affiliate link, where anything you buy in the shop will give us a small kickback, or you can go to Scouching.ca, where a subscription will get you access to a private Discord server, as well as access to plenty of cool toys on there, like data tables for drafted and undrafted prospects, live access to my rankings, exclusive blog content, and plenty of other fun stuff. So that is it for the Anaheim Ducks, and our next subjects will be the New York Rangers.